Good morning. Breaking the political gridlock. For the first time since assuming office, President Park Geun-hye sits with leaders from the ruling and opposition parties. Operation Protective Edge kills at least 85 as the Israeli military strikes some 500 targets. Palestinian medics say the deaths include innocent civilians. This year's summer blockbusters are filled with male actors on the silver screen. Denny Hong has the who, what, when, where, and why. The Rodeo Drive of Korea, exclusive, expensive, and extravagant. Get a look at the hotspot for the rich and famous on Korea Today, Friday, July 11th, 2014.
From Arirang News, this is Korea Today.
And a good Friday morning. Thank you for joining us on Korea Today. I'm Kim Myung alongside Oh Jin-ju and Kim Min-jung.
Good morning, everyone. It looks like Korea now has a new tallest building of the country. It's the NEAT Tower, or the Northeast Asia Trade Tower that stands proudly in Songdo, Incheon. It's 68 stories high and 305 meters tall. That's a tall building right there.
Right, and the upper part of the building will be used as a hotel and the lower part as offices for companies that will go in there. But the interesting thing is that the hotel will be the place where officials and athletes from 45 countries coming to Korea for the Incheon Asian Games will be staying during their stay
They're
here.
going to get a great view from up there.
I hope the elevator never breaks down on that. Right?
Good point.
All right, but NEAT's reign is going to be short-lived because by 2016, the construction of a 123-story Lotte World Tower will be completed. Now, this one is going to be 555 meters tall. So enjoy that tallest title for 2 years, right?
That's right. It's like a competition to reach the sky, right?
That's right.
All right, we'll leave that there and check our top story this morning. President Park Geun-hye has sat down with leaders, the floor leaders and chief policymakers from the ruling and opposition parties for the first time since assuming office in hopes of breaking the political gridlock that has grounded her reform drive. The results of the confirmation hearings for key cabinet members were at the center of discussion, with the main opposition party leadership asking President Park to withdraw her nominations for the ministers of Education and Culture, saying they are unfit to serve. During what was described as a relatively amicable hour-and-a-half meeting, they agreed to pass pending bills, including the government reorganization bill and others drawn up in the wake of April's deadly ferry accident during the current plenary session. The opposition floor leader also proposed lifting sanctions imposed on Pyongyang following the deadly torpedo attack on a South Korean naval vessel back in 2010 to set the groundwork for inter-Korean dialogue, to which the president said she will consider.
And as widely expected, Korea's central bank held the key interest rate this month, but did cut the growth outlook for this year and the next. The Bank of Korea lowered its growth forecast for 2014 to 3.8%, down from its earlier forecast of 4%. It also cut its growth forecast for next year by 0.2 percentage points to 4%. The central bank said in a statement that while exports have held strong, domestic demand has weakened due to the negative impacts of the Sewol ferry disaster. The 7-day repurchase rate was held at 2.5% for the 14th straight month, but the bank did not leave out a possibility of a rate cut, as it had been under pressure to seek easier monetary policies to spur growth. The bullish rise of the local currency to a near 6-year high, downside risks associated with a U.S. exit from its stimulus program, and weakening economic growth in emerging markets have been identified as likely factors that led to the bank's recent decision.
And Seoul is expected to respond sometime today to Pyongyang's proposal on Thursday that the two Koreas hold a round of working-level talks next week to discuss the North's dispatch of athletes and cheerleaders for the Incheon Asian Games in September, when and if the talks take place as proposed at the truce village of Panmunjom next Tuesday. The two sides are likely to examine the size, transportation, and accommodation for the North Korean squad and the costs involved. Earlier this week, North Korea said it will send a cheering squad to the upcoming Asian Games in an effort to improve the icy inter-Korean ties. North Korea had sent nearly 300 cheerleaders back in 2002 when the two Koreas had warmer relations, and the cost to host one person was estimated to be roughly $6,000 US.
Today, the National Assembly wraps up one of its key sessions in a special probe into the ferry disaster that occurred almost 3 months ago. Now, a vast number of government agencies and organizations, including the presidential office, have come under scrutiny so far as the country grapples to find more answers to why the tragedy happened. What developments have been made so far? Our producer Lee Ji-yeon gives us a rundown.
It's a question of responsibility. Following the country's most disastrous accident in recent years, bereaved families and the entire country still wait for answers. As it nears a 3-month mark since the ferry sinking off the southwestern coast of Korea claimed almost 300 lives, lawmakers, police, and prosecutors continue to look for the chain of accountability. The process has created a complicated and multifaceted web of responsibility. With a parliamentary special committee wrapping up its questioning of involved agencies and organizations, including the Korea Coast Guard, media organizations, and the presidential office this week, lawmakers grilled officials, sometimes with emotions running high.
If the Korea Coast Guard has sent a text message or made a phone call to the passengers telling them to abandon ship, they would have. Why didn't the Coast Guard do that?
Criticized for its delayed response, lack of coordination, and overall absence of command, the Korea Coast Guard was dismantled by President Park Geun-hye shortly after the accident. And earlier this week, the country's Board of Audit and Inspection announced the ill-fated Seoul ferry was a vessel that should have never set sail.
The ferry, according to the rules and regulations at the time, should not have been allowed to operate the Jeju to Incheon route. The vessel itself had fundamental problems, and despite that, it was able to operate because of faulty review and authorization processes.
The investigators said the ferry operator knew the vessel was structurally flawed and tried to cover it up by manipulating the weight of cargo. The monitoring body, Korean Register of Shipping, still gave it the green light. The Board of Audit has requested related officials be reprimanded. And the elusive de facto owner of the ferry operator, Yoo Byung-on, he still remains Korea's most wanted man, with investigators vowing to push on with their manhunt. Other high-ranking officials from the company have already been taken into custody and are on trial. They have been charged with negligent homicide, but deny their knowledge of the ferry operation actually caused the accident. Also on trial are the 15 ferry crew members who abandoned ship. 3, including the captain, have been indicted for murder, and all members but 1 have denied charges against them. As the country continues to dig for answers on all fronts and address the flaws that have been identified so far, families of the victims and the public wait to see justice. Lee Ji-yeon for Korea Today.
Happy Friday morning. It's time to run through the front pages of your newspapers. As you heard at the top of the hour, President Park Geun-hye met floor leaders and policy chiefs of the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy for talks at Cheongwade, the presidential office yesterday. Now they discussed pending political issues, and that is on most of the domestic papers this morning. So let's begin with that, an image on that on Chosun-ilbo. And the picture is titled President Park smiling and shaking hands with the opposition floor leader. You can see her firmly shaking hands with opposition floor leader Park Young-sun. And on the left of Park is ruling party floor leader Lee Wan-gu. And to Park's right are the policy chiefs from each party, Woo Yoon-gun and Ju Ho-young. Now at the meeting, the president called for bipartisan parliamentary cooperation to revitalize the economy and also enhance the livelihoods of the public. Now scooting over to Jungang-ilbo for this story here on the side. And this one is regarding an expert forum addressing Korean reunification. This story is on the 13th Korea-Germany Forum that is being held here in Seoul at Ewha Women's University in Seodaemun-gu District. The title says, "Support to restore North Korea's cultural assets will help regain trust from Pyongyang." And those are words coming from Thomas Schaefer, the German ambassador to Pyongyang. He said that a project to provide support to restore North Korea's damaged cultural assets and historic sites would be a greatly helpful method to regain trust from the reclusive country, citing that there were good results for Germany when they carried out projects to restore historic sites in North Korea. Now, at the three-day forum from Wednesday to Friday this week, about 70 experts and government officials gathered to speak on the German unification process as well as other bilateral cooperation issues. Now going over to 동아일보 for a look at this story here at the bottom, close up. And this headline says, U.S.-China agree on urgency of denuclearizing Korean peninsula. So U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was just over in Beijing for the annual Strategic and Economic Dialogue. And following yesterday's meeting, he said that Washington and Beijing agreed on the urgency of swiftly curbing the North's nuclear weapons program, addressing that they discussed specific ways to achieve this goal. He also said that China and the U.S. share the same strategic objective and that the two sides discussed the importance of enforcing UN Security Council resolutions that impose sanctions on North Korea's weapons of mass destruction and, of course, ballistic missile programs. However, he also stressed that China needs to do more in reining in its unruly ally. Now, switching gears to some business news. First up on the Mail Business newspaper. Taking a look at this story. The title says both Korea and the U.S. lower economic growth forecasts. So institutions in the two countries revised down their forecasts for economic growth. If we take a look at this bar graph here. Firstly, the Bank of Korea revised its economic growth forecast for the Korean economy downward to 3.8% from 4%, while the U.S. Private Economic Institute Conference Board also markedly cut its growth forecast for the U.S. economy from 2.3% down to 1.5%. Now, you also heard earlier on in the program's headlines that BOK Governor Lee Ju-yeol yesterday noted lackluster domestic consumption since the Seoul ferry disaster as a reason behind this forecast. Also, the conference board at a press conference on Wednesday said the U.S. economy contracted in the first quarter, and it will likely remain mired in this state for the time being. And finally, wrapping with a look at the Korea Economic Daily for this story towards the corner there. And this is about Seoul National University Hospital announcing yesterday that it has won a service contract for Sheikh Khalifa Specialist Hospital, which is a royal hospital in the United Arab Emirates. So the header says SNU Hospital to operate UAE Royal Hospital. Now, this is the first Korean hospital to sign a service contract with a general hospital in another country. The president and CEO of SNU Hospital said Sheikh Khalifa finally chose SNU Hospital as a service provider at the end of last month, adding that its trust in Korea's medicine and medical information system seems to have significantly affected this decision. And that was a look at your newspaper headlines for this Friday. Wish you all a great weekend. And now coming up are the stock numbers from Thursday.
Let's now get a check of the weather. Midday highs are expected to reach some 33 degrees Celsius here in Seoul. That's stifling hot. That is just
That sure is.
unbelievably
And
hot.
combine that with the humidity that we have, then you have some little arguments and quarrels going on here and there, set off just by
right.
the weather, right? But the tropical storm Noguri is currently over Japan. We'll be hearing about that as well as today's weather.
Let's go over to Chun Sung-cho right now, who joins us from outdoors. Good morning to you, Sung-cho.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. I'm reporting live from the Yongsan Family Park. Yes, Typhoon Noguri is currently over Japan's Tokyo, traveling northeastward, and Korea is completely out of its influence now. And now that it's gone, we're left with a scorching heat wave that will annoy many all throughout the weekend. A heat wave advisory has been issued pretty much all across the country toward the inland areas, such as Gyeonggi-do, Gangwon-do, Chungcheong-buk-do, and Gyeongsang-Nambuk-do provinces. Conditions for the city of Daegu will be even more severe, facing a heat wave warning. Today's blazing sun and high humidity level will push the afternoon heat index values in these areas up to 54 degrees Celsius, so you see how hot it'll be. The Korea Meteorological Administration announced that people caution against getting heat stroke by avoiding outdoor activities and drinking more water than usual. And with that, let's get a closer look at today's temperature readings. You see all those cities hitting the 30s. Seoul's highs are 32, Daegu the hottest at 34, and Jeju the coolest at 27 degrees Celsius. Good news is that on Sunday, the southern regions will be cooled down a little bit with some precipitation in the forecast. This is all from me with the weather update. Back to you, Min-jung.
Time now for a look through the global headlines we're following this morning. For that, we'll turn to Eunice Kim, who joins us from the News Center. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Min-jung.
Now, we had a particularly dead third day of Israeli aerial strikes on the Gaza Strip as dozens more were killed, and the UN is now stepping in and calling for restraint.
That's right, and this just coming into our newsroom, Min-jung, U.S. President Barack Obama phoned Israel's President Benjamin Netanyahu and said the United States was willing to negotiate a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. We'll get to the United Nations in just a moment, but first, an update on the growing Israeli airstrikes against Hamas. Its military says it has struck some 500 targets throughout its third day of the so-called Operation Protective Edge. The number of deaths this week is now at least 85, many civilians among those, despite Israel's claim that it's focusing on military targets like rocket launching sites and underground tunnel networks. But Palestinian medics say Israeli fire also hit a beach cafe, killing 8 people watching a World Cup semifinal game, and another a home in Khan Yunis, striking a family inside. Now in New York, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency meeting to discuss the conflict. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, whom you just saw there, urged for both sides to reach a ceasefire, saying an Israeli ground operation is still preventable if Hamas halts its rocket fire into Israel. Israel's UN envoy reported 442 rockets have been launched into Israel, or about 1 every 10 minutes, according to him. Now, Chinese hackers broke into U.S. computer networks holding the personal data of all federal employees, apparently with an eye on those who applied for top security clearances. The breach attempt happened in March, according to the New York Times, and confirmed by Homeland Security officials, though it isn't clear whether any information was actually stolen and whether the Chinese government was involved. The news broke as U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was in Beijing for bilateral talks to thaw tense relations over cybersecurity with China. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry spokesman Hong Lei called the Times article a part of an irresponsible anti-China smear campaign.
So definitely some tension there. And here's another case of cyber espionage that's damaging diplomatic ties, this time between allies. And in a dramatic display, the German leader has ordered America's top spy official in Berlin to leave the country.
That's right. That would be the CIA's Berlin station chief, and it basically amounts to an expulsion. The dramatic display by German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, comes as Berlin discovered a suspected U.S. spy in its own defense ministry days after a German foreign intelligence worker was detained on suspicions he too was a CIA informant. Now, in her most direct comment on the issue yet, Chancellor Merkel said spying on allies is a waste of energy in the end, adding there are many important problems on which attention should be focused. The Chancellor is among the Germans whose cell phones are believed to have been tracked by U.S. agents. And that's a wrap of the global headlines we're following this morning.
And still ahead, could it be the explosive action scenes or the mind-numbing charisma or their authentic acting? Male actors have swept up the film industry so far this year, and with some particular genres and recipes of success. We'll take a closer look on K Entertainment.
In cancer treatments, a combination of surgical removal and chemotherapy or radiation therapy are the traditionally well-known and common methods. But these treatments are not without deteriorating health side effects. Now, radiotherapy is a treatment for cancer using high-energy radiation, usually X-rays carefully calculated to damage the cancer cells and stop these abnormal cells from growing. A team of doctors in Korea have been increasing success stories with radiotherapy.
The primary method of cancer treatment is the physical removal of the tumor, but treating it without cutting into the body.
It's very impressive because CyberKnife has similar effects to surgery, and all I need to do is lie still.
My doctor told me that most of the cancer cells in my liver have disappeared.
Radiotherapy is a method of treatment used for many cancer patients and can bring out results similar to that of surgery. And like any other field, a group of doctors lead the way with their impressive treatment results. This is the CyberKnife Center at Korea Cancer Center Hospital. These people here have chosen non-invasive CyberKnife treatment, which is a form of radiotherapy. Radiotherapy uses beams of radiation to penetrate the body, and it damages the DNA in cancer cells, killing the tumor. Combining radiotherapy with the latest technology is CyberKnife surgery.
The best part about CyberKnife surgery is that it selectively removes cancer cells while preserving the surrounding healthy tissues.
Also, CyberKnife treatment minimizes existing side effects from radiotherapy, such as vomiting and nausea. At this center, 3,000 cases have been treated, including treatment for cancer in the brain, spine, liver, lungs, and also on patients who cannot be operated on.
I have been diagnosed with liver cancer, and other hospitals had told me that I wouldn't be able to receive surgery, so naturally I lost hope. But someone I know had received CyberKnife treatment here and recovered, so I received the same treatment, and now I'm living a regular life while coming in for regular checkups.
In the case of inoperable patients compared to when they receive existing treatment, combining CyberKnife treatment doubles the possibility of the cancer not recurring for 2 years. The success rate for spine cancer is also higher than existing records in the field. It's especially effective on prostate cancer, showing a 100% success rate. They work closely with various departments, determining how much radiation is needed, for how many treatments, and for how long. Doctors of science also take part in this process to increase the success rate of the treatment.
When we know CyberKnife surgery will take place because a tumor can move as a patient breathes, we need to determine whether to take that into consideration. Using this process, we draw out the most ideal method with these simulations.
Their leading skills were also recognized by a prominent journal, winning them worldwide acknowledgement. These doctors are opening new opportunities and winning recognition on the global stage with their radiotherapy, providing new hope in taking on cancer.
And still ahead on Korea Today, it has long been known to be the place to be. If you want to be cool, we take you to the hip, vibrant, and ritzy streets of Apgujeong-dong and stroll down Rodeo Street. From fancy Korean dishes to desserts nearing perfection, Matthew Chung has more.
And time for News Sum Up. Today we have some exciting news for car lovers here in Korea. The nation's biggest annual car tuning exhibition, Seoul Auto Salon, is now open.
A car tuning expo. Interesting. Well, Korea's top comedian Yoo Jae-seok's act of goodwill leaves people in good spirits. That's also in the news. We'll check these keywords trending online with our Seo Mi-sorang, who joins us from the digital room. Good morning, Mi-sorang.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys. That's right. So both the Seoul Auto Salon and Yoo Jae-seok's private donation are high up on the search phrase rankings right now, as are the following other issues. The Bank of Korea freezes the key interest rate for the 14th straight month at 2.5%. Heatwave advisories have been issued in most cities inland, including Seoul and the central regions. And a massive baseball park named after the Korean player Park Chan-ho is being built in the Dongducheon city of Gyeonggi-do province. Now, going back and looking at the first listing there, if adding performance enhancements to your car are your kind of thing, and if the thought of dressing it up gets you all excited, then make sure to head down to COEX this weekend to check the 2014 Seoul Auto Salon. The annual Seoul Auto Salon is the largest aftermarket and tuning exhibition here in Korea, boasting well over 100,000 visitors each year. When you get there, you'll see endless displays of tuning parts and accessories for both performance enhancement and dress-up, booths offering car care products and services, as well as electronics for the car, such as this gigantic audio system. There are finished cars on display as well, like the humble Damas, a small generic van transformed into this cute little number. Now, of course, a true motor event wouldn't be complete without the racing models, and surrounding the decked out cars are many beautiful models, making the experience all the more enjoyable. Switching gears to entertainment news now, comedian Yoo Jae-seok is immensely popular here in Korea, not only for his ability to make us all laugh, but also for the vast number of witness accounts testifying to his kindness and thoughtfulness. In the latest such action, he puts his money where his mouth is. Let's take a look. A charity dedicated to helping the aged Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement revealed in a press release yesterday that Yoo Jae-seok had made a private donation of around $20,000. He had earlier shown his support for this charity on a TV program by taking part in a car race with a uniform and car that had the charity's logo on it. This is not the first time that the comedian has performed an act of goodwill. He and his colleagues at the popular variety show Infinite Challenge have made numerous public donations, and Yoo Jae-seok himself has made countless number of donations privately as well, including regular payments to the Beautiful Foundation, a multi-cause charity. And on that feel-good note, it's a wrap-up for today's edition of your Daily News Sum Up.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off with the resignations of manager Hong Myung-bo and vice president of KFA Heo Jung-moo on Thursday. So now what's next for the South Korean national football team with the Asian Cup coming up in 6 months? Well, the Korea Football Association will now be in a mad rush to find themselves a new head coach. And while Hwang Sun-ong, the Pohang Steelers head coach and former teammate of Hong Myung-bo, is on the radar, many experts believe that the KFA will go with a foreign head coach this time. They added that by having a foreign coach who have an unbiased look at the players, and the manager would choose his players just on their talents alone. This, of course, referring to former head coach Hong Myung-bo's support of Park Ju-young. And staying with football as we continue on with our 2014 Brazil World Cup coverage. Now that Germany and Argentina are both headed to Rio for the final, let's take a look at how everything looks now. Now, first off, taking a look here, Saturday, 5 p.m. local time, the host nation Brazil faces off against the Netherlands in hopes to at least finish in third place. But of course, the big match we're all looking forward to is the World Cup final as Germany hopes to continue their goal-scoring ways, this time against Argentina, who defeated the Netherlands yesterday. This match kicking off at 4 p.m. Sunday, local time. Now, meanwhile, let's take a look at the scoring leaders so far. James Rodriguez of Colombia is still on top with 6, with Germany's Thomas Müller with 5. Neymar and Leo Messi both with 4, and Karim Benzema of France in 5th place with 3 goals. And now moving over to the first round of the LPGA British Women's Open, as Korean golf fans are cheering on for Park In-bi as she looks to complete the career Grand Slam after this weekend. And not a bad start in the tournament as the South Korean finishes off the first round at even par, trailing Ayaka Yuhara by 4 strokes for the lead. Meanwhile, Amy Yang and Yu So-yeon not far back, both tied for 6th place at 1 under par, as well as the number 1 ranked Stacey Lewis. Meanwhile, 18-year-old Lydia Ko with a pretty nice first round as well, as she sits tied with Park In-bi in 10th place. And now going into our Thursday night KBO action, the Kia Tigers hang on to beat the SK Wyverns 7-5, with the Tucson Bears barely holding on to beat the LG Twins 13-12 in an epic game. And Lotte Giants rally back to beat the Samsung Lions 5-2. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Hanwha Eagles go up against the Nexen Heroes. And of course, going into the game, here we go over to the bottom of the first inning. Kim Kyung-eun with an RBI single to right, giving the Hanwha Eagles the 1-0 lead before Kim Tae-gyu with 2-man on deep to center field, a gone 3-run shot, and Hanwha has an early 4-0 lead. By the top of the second inning, Park Hong-do says goodbye with a 2-run shot to left field. Deficit cut to 4-2. Meanwhile, the Hanwha Eagles bullpen doing a great job shutting out the Nexen Heroes after Andrew Albers throws 6 innings, a quality start as they hold on to win this one 4-2. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Like to beat the heat like that.
That is the only way to go, especially
at
a time like this when we have that humidity.
That's right.
Just jump in the water.
We're going to try to beat the heat with some entertainment news lined up with our very own Denny Hong. Good morning.
Good morning. So yeah, stay indoors. Air conditioning. Watch films. This past week in entertainment news, there was actually a lot of Korean singers making headlines both in China and in the U.S. So let's take a look at some of the buzz surrounding these stories. On this Friday the 11th, Wonder Girls Yeon is scheduled to sing Korea's national anthem at the Rangers ballpark on Korean Day ahead of a game between the Texas Rangers and LA Angels. This is the first time the Korean anthem will ring out across the Arlington ballpark. Chinese new album, Lucky Star, that was released in Japan on the 25th of last month, has grabbed 3rd place on the Oricon Weekly chart and is showing some great results in sales with already some 35,000 albums sold. Record producer DJ Premier, known for producing big names like Maroon 5 and Christina Aguilera, are expected to collaborate on stage with Korea's dynamic duo. The performance will be promoted not only in Korea but overseas as well on a large scale, so for hip-hop fans, it is something to look forward to. The U.S. popular movie review site Joe Blow published a list of must-see Korean movies on its website, and at the top was Shiri. The movie was hailed as the starting point of the new wave of Korean cinema, and Old Boy received an honorary mention, given that it is already the most seen Korean film overseas. Girl group FX's new song Red Light is creating a sensation in countries such as the US and China. Fuse TV in the States praised the group for being K-pop's top hipsters, introducing their music video and song. And also on China's online video website Iki, the music video ranked first, reflecting its popularity.
It's definitely good to see all these K-pop stars in Korean movies making headlines abroad. And talking about movies, like movies released these days don't really have a female star in them. Like they're all focused on male actors and male characters.
Much to our happiness of the female
Right.
My sadness, but the action's good.
I wouldn't say that specifically. There are going to be some films coming out later on in the second half of this year that do have female leads in it too. But for the most part, we're going to be looking at a trend in the movie industry right now in Korea where it seems to be dominated by male actors. And so we're going to be taking a look at some of these films that already come out, some that will, and of course, what the secret is behind their success so far.
Good looking. That's his secret.
One common thread behind Korea's major box office hits these days is male actors. Over the past 2 months, a flood of new Korean films have premiered, and male movie stars have been sweeping up more than half the ticket sales and movie rankings.
When you say male-driven films, you're usually talking about movies that revolve around action scenes, the idea of friendship, trust, and jealousy. These sorts of extreme emotions are usually included.
The first movie to kick off this trend is No Tears for the Dead, which premiered earlier in June and is led by Jang Dong-gun. It was directed by Lee Jung-bum, who sparked up the male-driven movie trend with the film The Man from Nowhere. The pairing of Jang and Lee was already at the center of public attention even before the film opened to the public. In this movie, Jang Dong-gun stars as a lonely, cold-blooded killer, acting out highly charged action sequences and unveiling a new take on male-driven Korean films.
기술을 필요로 하는 액션이었거든요. 그래서 훈련도 나름 다른 때보다 굉장히 열심히 많이 하고 준비 기간도 굉장히 좀 오래 걸렸던 것 같아요.
Following No Tears for the Dead is A Hard Day, featuring actor Lee Sun-gyun. The story is about a police officer who finds himself in hot water after one misjudgment and follows his attempt to cover it up. The crime movie has surpassed 3 million in ticket sales. It received a lot of spotlight before premiering by receiving an invitation to the Cannes Film Festival. Lee Sun-gyun has become the only Korean actor to be invited to the 3 major film festivals, Venice, Berlin, and Cannes.
예, 기분이 굉장히 좋죠. 우리나라 배우 중에 감독님 잘 만나가지고 이런 행운을 얻게 된 배우 중에 한 명, 그 정도.
Korea's top male actors, Jung Woo-sung, Lee Bum-soo, and An Sung-gi are leading the recent film The Divine movie, sweeping up the box office this summer. It centers around Korea's traditional game of baduk, a novel subject in the industry, and within 4 days, it hit the 1 million mark.
If male-driven films in the past simply featured a lot of men in their stories, these days we're seeing more versatile subjects and an effort to overcome some of the existing limitations that these movies used to have.
Actor Ha Jung-woo and Chae Min-sik also have secured their spots as icons of rough and tough characters, back with the movie Nameless Gangster, and the two will respectively star in period piece blockbusters set to premiere on the 23rd and 30th. Ha Jung-woo will star in the film Gundo, Age of the Rampant, as a heroic outlaw back in the Joseon dynasty. Other leading male actors such as Kang Dong-won and Lee Sung-min will also be starring in this film, making it a greater attraction.
강동원 씨, 이경영 선배님, 마동석 선배, 조진우, 그냥 그 자체가 큰 영광이고 정말 드림팀, 최고의 드림팀이 아니었나라는 생각이 들어요.
More than $13 million is said to have been poured into the production, boosting expectations for impressive grand action scenes. Another film in the spotlight following Gundo is Roaring Currents. Taking on the lead role in this movie is Chae Min-sik, who also starred in the recent Hollywood sci-fi action film Lucy. The star is most well known for his serious, charismatic take on his roles, so there is mounting expectations on how he will act out Korea's heroic figure, Admiral Lee Sun-shin.
도대체 이분의 무엇이 그러한 엄청난 추진력과 신념을 갖게 만들었는가에 대한 궁금증이 있었죠. 부담이 앞섰지만 한번 표현해보고 싶어지는 왠지 운명처럼 느껴졌어요.
But there are people less welcoming to this trend, saying the boom is driven by overly provocative and violent themes, and it's increasingly becoming inaccurate in historic accounts or falling out of touch with reality.
With these male-centered films, it's hard to leave out elements of violence or sensationalism. But that's not what movies are all about, so I actually hope to see the very topics used in dramas developed into Korean movies.
Male actors have dominated the silver screen so far in 2014, and there is growing interest in what turn it will take as the year progresses.
So, Denny, as you mentioned, many of these male-driven films recently released, they're mostly Korean-style film noir movies, but they still didn't do that well in the box office.
Well, no one sets out to make a bad movie, I would say, but it always comes down to, is there a connection between the vision the producers and directors have versus the connection with the audience itself? And I think it always comes down to, was there an overly much use of action and explosions, and does everything have to explode? That might be one of the things. So maybe too much of that. Characters that are underdeveloped, characters that don't drive the plot forward, pacing of the story. And I think this is where I think every director has to concern themselves with. And I would say they're not necessarily failures, but just that small misstep when it comes to connecting with their audience.
No, in my experience, I think in watching movies, not making it, but I think connecting with the characters.
One
no, maybe on my iPhone, maybe that's about it. But yeah, in my experience, I've noticed that a lot of the movies that overlook the character development as well as the plot and just put a bunch of action scenes in there, it doesn't do as well. But some of these films do end up flopping. A lot of them are popular, but that doesn't explain the female lead character-driven movies?
I think when it comes to the trend with female lead actresses, that a lot of times they are relegated towards more of the romantic movie genre, or even, I would use the word melodramatic, which is kind of like halfway between action and good drama, because it's just the term melodramatic just has that undertone meaning behind it. And so because of that issue, and I think also with the summer season, it might not be the perfect time for those dramatic romantic times. I feel like fall and winter are more for dramatic films.
Boring.
Hey.
People want action in the summer, I think.
So who are some of the female actresses that we need to keep an eye on come August, around summertime, right?
Actually,
I mean autumn.
We do have a lot of films that are coming out. One of them is called Pirates, and this one is going to be starring Son Ye-jin. And in this film, she, along with another competing pirate, is going to be going after a certain treasure on the seas. And so
it's not a romantic comedy.
No, but this is a period piece as well, too, which seems to be kind of like another trend as well, too. And along with that, Memories of the Sword, which also stars Chun Do-yeon, that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And one that won a Milan and Madrid Film Festival top awards, it's going to be called Late Spring. This one is going to be debuting in Korea as well. So those are some films to look forward to with female strong leads alongside male actors as well.
So something to look forward to. Come on, female actresses don't change and ruin movies.
No. I'm not just a big fan of romantic comedies.
I am. Me too.
You softies.
Hey, thank you, Denny.
No problem.
Thanks for that. All right, we're going to take a look at the top 5 on the Korean pop music charts, and we'll be back to talk with Matthew Chung about a nice district in Korea. we are going to take a visit to that nice district that we just mentioned over there and look at some of the foods from Apgujeong, the original trendy hotspot.
That's right, Treche chic, right?
That's where we used to hang out, right?
That's one of the trendiest places in Korea, right? Our Matthew Chung joins us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. And yeah, as long as I can remember, at least, Apgujeong, it's always been known as that, that glamorous neighborhood.
This is before Itaewon became big.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's continued that reputation.
It really has. It's maintained. It's kind of, it's very stalwart. It's a permanent fixture in our city. It's known to be that high-end area, but that doesn't just mean fashion. It doesn't just mean style. It also means some fantastic food. So why don't we check it out? Okay, so the Apgujeong neighborhood has a reputation for being a high-end place. Sometimes that means boring, but not this neighborhood. There are a ton of places that have a lot of character, so let's go check them out. So our first stop here in Apgujeong is Hansa Toy, and it's probably one of the most insane toy shops I've ever been in. First off, to call these toys would be doing them a disservice. These are amazing stuffed animals. So when you think stuffed animals, you think, it's a toy for a kid. But something like this is something that anyone could appreciate. Not only do they look great, the craftsmanship on these is pretty amazing. And this is Apgujeong after all, so the prices are sky high. Some of these pieces, they go into the millions of won, thousands of US dollars. But that's not as high as they go. Some of these, tens of thousands of dollars, which to me is absolutely mind-boggling. So this is Hamol. It's a high-end 한정식 restaurant here in Apgujeong. Oh wow. Ah, this is fantastic. The style of food that we have in front of us is 한정식. It's Korean fine dining. It's the way that they would eat in the Korean palaces. So rather than having course by course, it's all laid out right in front of you. There's so much to talk about, but first is bibimbap. Here, all these ingredients, they've all been individually seasoned. So each of them, it brings out the best flavor in every single preparation. That's thoughtful cooking. So they've managed to balance out all these different flavors into a very clean, very elegant dish. Now, I want to talk about two of the dishes that are in front of us. Here, we have our 조선 잡채. It's probably because everyone really loves it. Essentially, it's one that's based off of vermicelli, glass noodles. But traditionally, no noodles. So they take 7 different ingredients. Off the top of my head, they have ingredients like fiddlehead fern, there's lotus root in there, there's spinach as well. And it's all brought together with spicy Korean mustard dressing. And what you get are all these different textures and flavors that really just pop and they sing. So if Apgujeong is seen as the center of luxury here in Korea, then this food, it definitely fits the neighborhood. So a little off Apgujeong, you have this 토끼굴. It's a little rabbit hole. And it's appropriate because it really does feel like you're entering another world. It's this little tunnel and it leads down into the Han River. Whether you want to take your bike onto the bike trail, or if you're here to shoot a movie, Korean dramas, music videos, commercials have all been shot here. And one of the things that Korea has become famous for worldwide is our cosmetics industry. So we've come to this boutique, Hera, and it's so much more than just a plain makeup shop. It's more of a makeup experience. So you can undergo consulting here. They have professional artists on site, and they can turn you into whatever you'd like. So if you've ever wanted to feel like a star, get pampered, this is the place to go. So this is the place for the person who wants to come in and leave new person, or leave the door armed with some new tips. To end the day properly, as far as I'm concerned, you gotta have something sweet. And what I have in front of me right now, here at Padede, makes sense because there's this sort of air of elegance about this place. There's even some chocolate tailoring that's actually really cool. I haven't seen that in a long time, where they actually make outfits out of chocolate. And it's ginger chocolate, but that doesn't even begin to describe what goes in this. So let's take a look. So what you have in here is you have, at the bottom, a layer of dark chocolate with almond, and then you have milk chocolate with ginger, and then you have white chocolate on top, and then the whole thing is enrobed in dark chocolate couverture, and then on the top you have a nice, beautiful painted plaque. When something's put together really well, those flavors will start to hit you in waves. And the first thing that you get is that texture, is the almond. And then the outside's got the nice snap to it. And then the ginger happens. First, it's just a slight hint. It's a whiff of ginger. And then you start to get an intense ginger flavor. All right, and then after you have something as rich as that, you're gonna wanna have something to wash it down. And here we go. I always think that chilled chocolate beverages completely underrated. I mean, this right here, it's basically a grown-up chocolate milkshake, and what's not to love? Whoa. Now, that's intense. You know, what you get on this is not just chocolate, but there's susam in there. And it has this bitterness to it that mirrors the bitterness of the chocolate, and it's not too sweet, especially because flavor-wise, it's just so complex. So when people think of the Apgujeong neighborhood, you know, they tend to just think pure luxury, but I hope we've shown you that there's a little bit of character to this neighborhood, and that, you know what, definitely can be sweet.
Hey, look at all the food you brought for us. And those gimbap-looking things are actually chocolates.
This
Wow. We're going to get to that in a minute.
hot chesapap, right?
That's right.
And we have the rice beneath.
All right, so I'm gonna do it exactly the way you do it. So I'm gonna mix
Go
it because I'm
for it.
really hungry right now.
Mix it
And I'm
fast.
complaining about this. I just go ahead and just dump that in there, right?
Yes, so
How about
you...
the soy sauce here?
Yeah, so that's what makes it different. That's what makes it Jinju style, is that it's soy sauce based. And, you know, the name, so hot, the prefix hut refers to, you know, something, you know, fake. Was a faux, something. You know, so what it means is that 제사 is the sort of ancestral rites, and you know, at least in Confucianism, you let out a an offering to the ancestors, which often includes white rice. So you know, the name comes from, it's a playful sort of jab at non-Confucianism practicing people who wanted to have something like this, but you know, didn't really participate in the ancestral rites.
I have a quick question.
What's up?
Now, I've heard conflicting reports. Are you supposed to mix with your chopsticks, or are you
We've
supposed
talked
to
about
mix
this
with
before,
your...
yes, chopsticks, because it doesn't
right?
crush the ingredients.
But that was
However-
for torso bibimbap, no?
Yeah, so for this particular style bibimbap, however, they suggest that you mix it with your spoon.
Oh.
And it's because all the different elements, they're not left long. They're actually
I love
all...
the sound of
yeah,
this, too.
The brass, it does convey a really beautiful tone.
Time to eat.
Can you imagine giving this to your kids, and your kids are sitting there doing this all day?
And then that's when
Oh, I
you
could,
yell at
yeah.
them
Getting too
and
noisy.
say, hey, start eating right now. Wow, this looks really good. It looks really
Okay, so
healthy,
this is-
too.
this is how it
kinda
is, so
like
our cameras
temple
can see it.
food almost, right?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Not quite. I mean, it is a little bit more seasoned than temple food is.
I
But
see.
however,
With a
I mean,
bite
you
here.
know, that doesn't, don't get me wrong. You know, with all the different varieties of vegetables that you
so
find
good.
in there,
No.
yeah, it makes it still very healthy.
More flavorful than, I guess, temple food, but it's really definitely so good. It's so healthy, too. Look at all the vegetables in there. Let's talk about the next dish.
The japchae?
This is the japchae.
So yeah, that's japchae. But you know, if you notice, you know, comparing it to the japchae that we enjoy every day nowadays, you know, there's something missing,
What is that?
and that's the tangmyeon. The
You're
glass
right. I don't
noodles.
see the glass noodles in here.
So oftentimes when you go to places that do traditional, 한정식, a lot of the places will omit the tangmyeon because that's something that was classically reserved only for royalty. Because tangmyeon, it's made from the starch nowadays of sweet potato, but it's a very complicated, technically difficult ingredient to make and to procure. But it really does, you know, all those classic flavors of japchae, but it's lightened up a little bit with the omission
I
of
like
the
the
noodles.
kick the mustard gives.
Yeah, that you know, it really does. You know, it livens it up, and it also brings all those other elements together.
And I'm supposed to wash this down with that chocolate drink there, too?
Go for it, yeah. So, I mean, the chocolate drink, it contains susam. It's a type of Korean ginseng, and you know, I'm going to warn you though that it's not a sweetened chocolate drink.
Oh,
I was
really?
expecting
Chocolate?
this
Is
to
it like
be
dark chocolate?
really, really sweet.
Try
Look
it,
at
try
this.
it, try it. How's that?
It's rather bitter, but it's sweet. It's sweet, but not as sweet as you would expect from something like this. It looks like a chocolate milkshake, right?
Yeah. You haven't tried it. Try it.
And then the chocolate. We have to get to the chocolate before we close the show. We want to show these chocolates to our viewers. Oh my goodness, it's
Yeah, I thought they were
pretty.
rolls. They're
It is too pretty to be consumed,
Very
I think. Look, and explain to us about these chocolates.
So at the top, you have the little chocolate plaque. So they essentially what they do is they take these, it's essentially edible paint, and they paint directly onto it.
Actually, no need to explain. You just have to enjoy, right? Who wants to be explained about chocolates? Right?
I think
you
I'm
just
gonna
gotta
finish my
enjoy it. One for you.
Okay, well, we'll try the Hutchins Habab. Thank you for breakfast, Matthew.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to enjoy my chocolate.
Okay, all right. Well, that does it for this edition of Korea Today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here on Monday morning at 7 a.m.
Have a great weekend.
That's right.
Yummy.
And let's enjoy our food.
It's really good.
I gotta stay away from the chocolate.
Isn't
Here
it?
you
It's
go.
fantastic. Yeah, they really do.